Gentlemen, welcome to our panel, The Vehicle as a Marketplace. Please welcome your moderator, editor-in-chief of Innovation and Tech Today, Charles Warner.
Thank you very much. We are very excited for this panel. We are going to be talking about the vehicle as a marketplace. And I want to thank you all for showing up here. We have a tremendous panel of experts. I don't know a whole lot about this. I just publish magazines, but this panel is amazing, and they're going to be able to give you a lot of insight into one of the most interesting and fascinating areas of e-commerce and vehicles. And then at the very end, we'd like to open it up to questions. So feel free to save your questions for the end, and we'd love to have you guys as interactive as possible with this presentation. Sound good? Okay. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our panel. First of all, we have Andrew Poliak. He is the Chief Technology Officer from Panasonic Automotive. Next up on our panel, we have Vevina McAllister. She is the Director of Product Management, Growth, and Insights at Braintree. And last but not least, we always save the best for last, we have John Moon, the Chief Operating Officer at ConnectedTravel. Okay, and without further ado, let's talk about the vehicle as a marketplace. Can you guys just sort of set the stage for what the state of the state is right now as far as, the vehicle as a marketplace? Give us a little, kind of like a baseline foundation.
Let's go in order. How about you ladies first?
Sure. So from the payments perspective, PayPal is a part of Braintree. Braintree is a part of PayPal. And we've been working with a bunch of OEMs to figure out how we can help them integrate their payment services into vehicles. I think it feels very early days from my perspective. Conversations are happening and things are moving, but I don't think we have any payments currently available in cars, at least via PayPal.
Excellent. So from Panasonic's perspective, we're probably the largest automotive in-vehicle infotainment provider in the planet. And we're integrating a lot of things that allow you to interact with your world around you and integrate ways to acquire and purchase things, whether it be, downloadable maps that will come to the IVI. So a lot of soft good purchases right now, but that expands into the use of the vehicle systems, whether it's the telematics system, the cellular modem built into the car, or whether it's the IVI to actually make hard purchases, fuel, parking, you name it. So we have some of that on the road today.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with Vevina and with Andrew. We are early days and the opportunities are actually very open. I think you can kind of imagine what the use cases are now around your vehicle, but a lot of things are kind of converging at the same time. You're seeing changes in infotainment systems and actual software. You're seeing people expecting more from their infotainment systems and what they can provide and how they actually bring more value. And I think we're meeting that challenge. We're meeting that. We're able to deliver on some of those expectations. So a lot of opportunity.
Is this just a function of making things more convenient or frictionless for the consumer? Is that why, this is so important and is going to be such a big, area in growth?
So I'll answer it. I would say part of it, yes, to reduce friction, make it easier. I don't know how many of you use CarPlay. I use CarPlay a lot, even being in the in-vehicle infotainment space. But when I go to Starbucks and want to use my app and I'm stretching the cord out my window to try to get them to scan it, it's not very convenient. And then you unplug it, and then all of a sudden your navigation's back out, and for whatever reason, Google Maps always resets and doesn't even keep my destination going from where I was. So it's more painful than it needs to be. Having something that you just drive through, knows your order, you pick it up, you grab it out the window, you keep going. There's no no friction at all in that transaction is definitely where we're going and where we need to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, because, sometimes you can have connection issues. Sometimes you can have, you're on the phone with someone, you're trying to pull up the app, somebody texts it, the interaction. So it seems like this will, I saw a statistic that by 2025, they expect $17 billion in consumer spending through integrated and in-vehicle marketplace apps. That's a lot of money.
Yep.
Yeah.
By the way, one other one I would probably ask, and I'd love to ask you actually this question, sure. But we had talked to a lot of more like the credit card type companies, and they mentioned if they could really reduce fraud by tying your identity very cleanly to that transaction, they could actually offer discounts to merchants and others for having that extra layer of authentication. So sometimes people have looked at the car and say, what better example that you're really you than your car and that you're in it. Now, yes, other people could drive it, but it could be that extra level of authentication, or if there's cameras in it and it could marry a picture that you allow, maybe you could get a discount because they wouldn't have to have as high of a transaction fee, and they could offer that discount to merchants. So maybe I'd ask if you see that, or is that?
So I'll answer it pretty generally, which is from a payments perspective, security is key, right? Being able to confirm that you are who you are and you're making this transaction is important. And the more data you can provide to assure that it is you, the better off we are and the more comfortable everyone is. And by everyone, I mean PayPal and Braintree. I mean the networks, which is Visa, MasterCard, Amex, those players, as well as your issuing bank who eventually approves or declines as well your transaction. So all of these players play a part in confirming that transaction is an authentic transaction. And if we're able to share reasonable amounts of data with all of the players, that would then say, hey, whether that's a picture or a zip code or an EMV chip that exists, for example, in your credit card today, all of that shares data, which gives confidence in that transaction.
Yeah, what I like to call it is a car present transaction, not a card present transaction.
Right.
So if we have it's harder to prove a 5,000 pound vehicle was there than it is a plastic card. So if we have the technology in the infotainment systems to help prove that the vehicle was part of that transaction, that's going to be the I think where we can make this even more efficient. I mean, a little bit about the friction thing. It's not just a little friction; it's a lot of friction.
Yeah.
But you'll find, I think, that people will do a lot of things even though there might be a lot of friction because it actually gives them a lot of value. And I think we see that with driver distraction. Like people are picking up their phones to do certain things because there's a certain value to that, whether it's actually a lot of value, like making a text message, or there's a certain convenience that happens in that device, and that we don't see that in the vehicle yet. And I think that's, if we can bring some of those things to consumers in a safe way, we can kind of alleviate some of the things that we're trying to get done while trying to also drive safe.
Yeah, I've got an 8-year-old daughter, and I'll never forget. I was taking her to school the other day, and she's in the back seat, and I was on my phone, and I was sending a text message, and I was trying to pick out a song, and I was looking on my maps, and I was doing all this while I was driving. And she goes, "Wow, Dad!" She's like, "You're so good. You can text and drive." And I was like,
Wait till I tell my friends.
Yeah. So I guess that's a good segue. How do we make John, how do we make vehicle commerce safe for the driver?
Yeah, so
because that wasn't safe, what I was doing. Do not do that.
Yeah. We now have new technologies that are making their way. Voice is getting much better. We have people who actually understand how to interact with voice. We have technology and hardware and software that's getting better as well. Let's use all the keyword catchphrases here and keywords. AI can help with that as well. Some of those things can be done automatically for you in terms of understanding where you might be going and how you surface those conveniences for you. It has not been brought to the vehicle in a way that leverages that, and some of that is part of vehicle development cycles. It takes a long time to deploy software and applications, but that time is getting shorter and shorter and reduced, and we also have new connectivity technologies that are coming out that will help reduce that and the load on that. So we're optimistic in kind of how that might express itself more and more, and things like Android Auto and CarPlay, we kind of see where that's going, and we see the convenience that it can bring in a safe way.
And I think even to add on to that, to think specifically about fleets, I'm sure to your point, there's cameras in those types of cars like Ubers that have backward-facing cameras. That type of technology could really help as well to help authenticate the person rather than having to pick up your phone and press a button or hold it up to your face. Yeah.
I mean, voice seems like the logical, easiest thing. You don't have to pick up your device. You can talk. That seems like it's going to be more frictionless. But also, artificial intelligence. Like it's suggesting you, hey, do you want to purchase this? Do you want to do that?
Yep.
That's also, that's very convenient. Also a little bit creepy when it knows exactly what you want to do. But is that going to play a role in how this gets integrated? Will it be voice? Will it be artificial intelligence? Will it be kind of a bundle of things to make it safe and easy?
Yes.
Yeah. well, and I guess the question around creepy, it's creepy if it comes out of nowhere, but if it's in your calendar and AI knows that you're driving and and it can assume that you're going to, say, a certain destination, it's not creepy. It's actually assistive. It's supportive. It's helping you. It's helping with getting that errand or that trip done in a safe way. So I think you find creepiness comes in when it's not expected and something just happens that really is unexpected.
I think our creepy is the next generation's comfort. So my daughter shares way too much about location. So, also going on the voice path a little bit. So we showed a couple of years ago at CES the first embedded, fully offline or capable of being offline Alexa and Hey Google, where you can do it both in the cloud and have it live, but also have a lot of those features embedded. So you'll even be able to have a lot more that can authenticate and work whether you have a connection or not. You will need a connection eventually in the vehicle, but voice is absolutely going to be it. And I think it will even take it a step further with AI and some of the predictiveness. As Audi did a project, or they have cars with DHL that they can allow one-time access to your trunk for a delivery. So imagine being able to do something like an Amazon Now and having it know exactly where you're going to be at what time, where it can meet you and deliver that thing you just bought up using your voice within minutes from wherever you may be. You forgot your charger, it'll meet you on some spot and put it in your car.
Completely cut down your errands. How long it takes you to run errands, getting out, getting in, things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's not that far off. These features are actually going towards production right now.
Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of them 2021, 22, 23.
And a lot of what we have already what we already do with the vehicle is around commerce and retail. You fueling your car is part of that transaction, but that's very utility. But 45% of the time that you are in your car, you're running an errand or heading to retail. If we can make that more assistive and not have the user have to configure those things, payment should be transparent. I think Vevina would agree. If nobody knows them and are using them using Braintree or PayPal, that's the holy grail, because it should be really convenient. It should be easy. You shouldn't have to put your credit card number in every single time you want to use it. Imagine having to do that with Uber and Lyft while you're sitting in this taxi line trying to pay for things. So the more effortless that can be, the more and the more it's part of your journey, the better that experience will be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all can recognize here in Vegas, you play that game, am I going to Uber, am I going to Lyft, am I going to take a cab? And the biggest drawback that I notice right now with a cab is when you get there, you still have to go through the payment process.
Yeah, exactly.
And it seems like it takes forever. Anybody else notice that? Like there is no quick way to do it. So the Uber or the Lyft is almost a no-brainer because you can just say thank you, make sure you didn't leave your stuff, and you're out. Yep. And you can get on with your life. I think that's a that's a really important part of it, especially as things are moving forward. Let me ask you this: since the phone is everything, why not the phone? Why? I think this was something that you.
I think it's an open question for me, which is when you get into your car, why can't your phone be the center? Mm-hmm. And I'm saying this as a consumer because, working for a financial institution, it's concerning to have a wallet in every application, in every sort of accessory. So maybe that's more of a question for these guys, which is, from a security standpoint and from the PayPal and Braintree and fintech perspective, we do everything we can to make sure that those transactions are insured and that it's not fraud and we're protecting our cardholders and our users. But part of that is also the cardholder and user being smart about how they manage their credit and place their credit cards.
Yeah, I think for sure the phone will still be a key part of the transactions you make and probably even when in your car. But I think what really changed a little bit the dynamics was as vehicle platforms started to be based on similar technology that's in your phone today. So we announced our SkipGen and Spider 3.0, which is an Android-based platform. It's based on a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8155, which is the same thing in a Pixel 4 smartphone running Android 10, same thing as a Pixel smartphone. It's got all the security and it's got all the even added security than what you'd typically have in a smartphone because of the level of vehicle integration that we have to do to keep it safe and reliable. So I think you couple that with, like you said, the 5,000-pound wallet that makes it very difficult to steal, to lose, to leave in a car because it is your car. You're going to stay there. Yeah. It's easier to create a frictionless transaction in a way that it's not going to get stolen with the car, in my opinion. You'd have to steal the car. So, I think you'll get both, but there'll be advantages to what you can do in the car using a transaction.
And it's always a bit of a trade-off too, and I can always hand my credit card to a variety of different people, and they can the probably in this day and age, if I gave Andrew my credit card right now, he'd probably be able to go get lunch and do whatever he needs to do with my credit card. But there is a certain amount of that balance between convenience and customization as well. If I got into a car and it's set to my configuration in terms of my seat position and all of these things, and then Andrew gets in the same car, it's not necessarily going to fit. Some of these things around identity in the vehicle are going to be related to how to make it convenient for that person too. So payment comes along with that, being able to purchase the different convenient food or other things like that. Those are going to be tied to identity as well. So really the how we make these things convenient and useful for a customer are going to be tied to identity. Phone helps with that. In the future, it might just be in the cloud, and I can identify myself, and those things will be available as easily. It's that balance, and I'm sure we'll be kind of iterating through that quite a bit.
I think also if with your phone, it doesn't know that you just pulled into a parking spot to automatically have it pay for that parking. You have more steps, that you have so many sensors on a car that a lot of that will be able to know exactly where you are and what you're trying to do, and it makes it easier to reduce those frictions in the transactions.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be great? You go to a parking garage or a parking spot and you just pull up and it knows what it is and it gets the best available rate and it charges you and you don't have to get out. You don't have to look for change. You don't have to, I mean, it seems like a utopia.
Well, think about the autonomous vehicle. You may give authorization for your car to make some purchases on your behalf, right?
Yeah.
So it may go to that parking spot by itself and self-park. As you know, a lot of people are demonstrating that self-park or valet autonomous applications. You may have something where there's a charge. Just be easier to just, have your car go park and it might transact for you.
Wow. Your car could buy you a birthday present or something like that,
Only if it loves you.
You were thinking of me. How do merchants get involved, John? How would merchants plan for collaborating with OEMs?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about this marketplace topic. I mean, we were even on a panel about the topic. And so advertisers, marketers, brands, retailers are, I think, beginning to look more and more at the vehicle and how do they get engaged. I think part of the reason we're even sitting on this panel is to talk about, it's possible. It's going to become more and more possible as things kind of evolve with the infotainment system. I think you're seeing some of the early starts and stops that occur in the industry, and some of it is through the transaction providers and the gateways and on the payment side of things, and others are kind of looking for the right partner, and we'll also be reaching out to folks. So. The more and more, I think we're seeing a lot of OEMs. I think Andrew might be seeing this too, being interested about this topic and trying to understand more and more. I guess I would say there's going to be a little bit of patience also that needs to happen in terms of that expectation. But I think a lot of them also have innovation teams that understand that too. But it's coming. I think that's the message that we want to share, and with a little bit of patience.
There, and also a lot of possibilities when you start thinking about autonomous vehicles, right? So now if you don't have to drive, you've got time on your hands, for that 20-minute commute. That opens it up to where you could be, knocking some things off your list, doing some e-commerce. I mean, is that the idea that while we're, in the car going from point A to point B, that ultimately we could be shopping. We could be knocking some stuff out.
While I'm on the automotive side, we partner very closely with our avionics group that has the largest in-flight entertainment system market share. And those sky malls are not there because no one buys anything. Obviously, people buy things on planes and buy things when you're a captive audience for some length of time. So you can imagine that people are absolutely looking at that, especially even though right now many rides are a single occupant in the U.S., when that becomes a ride rather than a drive, absolutely you'll have time to transact and interact and take care of shopping and do other things. That it's a great time to use it.
What about ride shares? I'm sure that they've got their eyes in this space and how they can capitalize on it and create relationships. Can you guys provide any insight into that or any?
Have any of you bought something when you're in an Uber or Lyft or some rideshare? Raise your hand. Let's see.
3 people.
There's some.
Four.
Or book something, or
book something,
tickets.
or yeah. I mean, to me, it's time that you can use to do what you want to get done. But I think it keeps getting more convenient, and it'll be longer rides, obviously. And as it starts getting, when you don't feel bad for not talking to the person in front of you because it's an autonomous car, you'll probably spend more of the time doing that.
Yeah, I think I read something in TechCrunch that was talking about a company, is it Cargo, that is working something out with all the Ubers in Brazil. So while you're in there, in the car, you can basically order snacks or things like that, and while it's on the route, it'll just swing by, and you can get it right there. You don't even have to get out, and just, super Uber convenient. Yep. Yeah. What do you guys think as far as is it going to be just as secure to have this stuff integrated into your apps, the vehicle as a marketplace, as it is in the phone right now? Or, as you guys alluded to earlier, would it maybe be more secure?
So John and I were chatting about this in the speaker room earlier, the green room. From what I can tell, in all the use cases, and you and I didn't chat about this, so maybe you have use cases that I'm unaware of, but The stack that we have today, maybe there are new data points that we need to listen to, whether that's a voice imprint or something like that, that helps us authenticate. But the stack that exists today within Braintree and PayPal is the right stack. And maybe there are new things that trigger our fraud rules or, trigger leveraging a higher authorization rate because we feel confident that it's you. But I think that outside of the existing use cases, what exists for payments is a usable stack for the vehicle. It just requires OEMs or infotainment systems to integrate with that stack and be able to leverage those features essentially.
Mm. Do you know, is there an overall trend of, since things like PayPal and stuff like that are easier to access and more things like that, is fraud up or down?
Up.
It is?
Yes.
Okay. This could maybe help bring that down, though?
As many things that we generate to identify current fraud, fraudsters are smart and keep identifying new ways to trick. So it's a constant battle for any sort of financial institution to keep working hard at fraud. So I would say that is like authentication of who you are is probably the biggest piece of payments in order to make that seamless experience, because payments, as John said, should be seamless. Like that is part of what the fingerprint is. That is part of what that, facial recognition is you don't have to flub around for things, find your wallet. That's why PayPal Wallet was so impactful, because, you were surfing on the web and you didn't want to get up and walk 10 feet to go get your wallet. And it was just so convenient to do that. So payments should be seamless, but we really do need to make sure that we're not enabling fraud.
Yeah. And it's got to work, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I as a guy who publishes a tech magazine, we get access to a lot of tech. We get to try a lot of things out and stuff like that. Nothing is more frustrating than tech that looks cool and sounds cool and it's supposed to do something cool and you can't get it to work. Have you guys tried to tap your card on the, does that work?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes, right? It's like a crapshoot. Sometimes it works, and so I think it's important that when they do roll these things out and everything like that, that it works and that it is something people are comfortable doing. Because if it only works 50% of the time, then you'll blow it off and you'll do it the old way.
Or like your first experience is a poor experience, and so you never use it again.
Yeah. I think that's really important because the car. How much time do people spend in a car? Do you know?
I think Betsy knows right off the top because we've talked about it. I'll put her on the spot. No, but I think it's about an hour.
Okay.
A day.
55 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is the average.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of opportunity to get stuff done, to be entertained, to communicate, and it's just got to work. Can you talk a little bit about the Andrew, some of the soft parts or applications that can be downloaded or purchased? Maybe give some examples.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing that we keep hearing from car companies, and there have been quite a few that have said this publicly. I think Porsche once said they would rather sell the same car 1,000 times than 1,000 cars. So we believe that we probably peaked in North America in terms of vehicle volume at that 18 million vehicles a year. And we think with rideshare and autonomous and things are going to start to decrease those overall vehicle shipments, at least of standard cars. It might be replaced with a lot of micro mobility or e-bikes and scooters and other things, but the traditional car segment will go down. So a lot of OEMs do need to find a way to monetize those vehicles post-sale because they might be selling less of them. So that idea of soft goods in a car is already been there. So how many of you have got a notification that there's a new map update or an email or whatever else that's like, buy your new map update and we'll send you, a CD with the new maps on it, all right? But in the future, that will all be just transactions that you can do in your car, download new applications, new maps, navigation solutions, maybe applications. We're starting to show and put things like Netflix and Spotify and other things into the car directly that you'll be able to interact with and perhaps rent a movie or use your subscription you already have or renew it. So those soft parts of and soft goods of having things come are coming And I think, one other thing is personalization. The ability to have those also roam with you from car to car. Part of making things be able to authenticate you, as many of you, both of you, John, and we've said, is making them useful and not creepy. So voice biometrics, if you use it in a way to personalize the vehicle environment. So when you get in, you say, hey, I'm going wherever. It knows it's me. It knows my seat setting. It knows my applications. They follow me into the rideshare or the rented car, and all my subscriptions and applications and things come with me just by talking once. A lot of those are just going to make it more convenient to want to buy something that lives with you through cars and in different environments.
And as these services become available by account, and whether that's content and or purchasing services, it's easier to stay with an ecosystem or a vehicle that might be able to express that or carry that over for you. Yep. No one likes to upgrade their phone, right? you're in the Apple Store at least a 60-minute amount of time. So, and that's if you stay within an ecosystem. So the more that we can kind of bring those soft goods over, and also the soft goods and the services capabilities, right? If we can bring those over to additional environments, you're incentivizing people to stay within a particular ecosystem. And that might be a lot or it might be a little, but it's the thing that's going to make this difference as you start actually selling less vehicles, and also if you are trying to get people to stay or use that vehicle. I think the other thing is to think about how, like, a useful vehicle is a vehicle that is going to be used more and potentially is going to be the replacement for that in the future. So how do you make sure that experience is great? How many times have people kind of been upset with the infotainment experience in your car? Raise your hand.
Ugh.
So
not Panasonic systems.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
So that's the thing is, on the flip side, if you've had a great experience, you'll come back.
What are some of the other things? Andrew, you talked about fueling without a card transaction.
Yep.
That sounds pretty cool. Starbucks, not even having to use your phone, just going through there. Robot charging, fully automated. Like what are some of the other things? Like this is, pretend it's like Christmas Eve, and these are the tech breakthroughs that we've got. What are some other ideas or applications here for this?
Yeah, you stole a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Definitely, like Volkswagen announced their robotic charging stations right now, so you could. That's definitely one where you don't even have to think about refueling or recharging. You just leave your car; it knows where it is. It drives a little robot up and charges it. When you're ready to go, you go. And I don't know if you go to Silicon Valley, they already have these little charging vehicles that roll up and charge your car while you're at work in many of the startups in Silicon Valley places. So that's one. I think where it starts getting interesting, and I think the idea of any kind of purchase you can make being with you when you want to have it with you. I left a watch charger. I've been dying because my watch is pretty much dead. I put it in low power mode, but left it at home. Doesn't seem to be a standard charging format that I can make it work. Be nice if on the way to the airport when I realized it could have just met me a new charger if I had to, right? There'll be a lot of, I think as you make payment enabled and as you start doing more things on the fly, you'll find a lot of new use cases.
Just as a side note, there's actually gas-powered robots that do the same thing. So instead of just like charging your car electronically, you can have someone while you're at work refuel you automatically too. So
that's great.
So it's gonna be convenient. It's gonna be time saving. It's going to be it's gonna open up more opportunities for online retailers to provide services and things like that. Like, I mean, it sounds like a win-win. Are there any potential, unintended consequences or things you can see where this starts becoming more and more available and people are using it?
The one thing is right now, of course, the vehicle lifespan is 11 years. So, we were talking with some popular video streaming services and talking about making those apps available. And we joked because 11 years ago, some of them didn't exist, and some popular ones that we probably all have subscriptions to. So imagine trying to plan for something that's going to last that 11 years. So in the case of security and other things, that you upgrade your phone every so often, that's easier to keep that security updated. So that's definitely a challenge. Now, we've done a lot to provide, we have our One Connect service that we are showing off with Harley-Davidson, providing over-the-air software updates, reflash of components, including ECUs, and even having a hardware upgradable solution in the IVI, again, to address that trend where you may have the same car, quote unquote, sold multiple times, that you'll want to upgrade the vehicle post-sale with a module. So there are ways to address it, but it is definitely something we look at that unintended consequence to say, how do you keep all the things that you've put into place that you described to make sure that it's secure and everyone finding workarounds on it? How do you make sure that you fix that when you're going to keep this thing for 11 years as well? So that's the one I could think of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think an unintended consequence is also the world will be mixed for a long time, right? It's not like the utopia we just described is going to suddenly occur and everyone's going to be on the same page and we're all going to have robots gassing or, charging our cars for us. It's not the Jetsons suddenly. There's going to be
drones dropping things into our backseat for us,
I think there will be a mixed world for quite a long time.
Yep.
And so from a payments perspective, we need to handle all of those scenarios, right? The credit cards, because people still use credit cards. The people who, thank you.
Violin.
Okay, right, I'm done.
A symphony going on here.
Just my point being that it's a mixed world, and so the unintended consequences of that could be maybe it is more fraud, maybe it is confusion, those types of things. It could be more inequality. Those types of conversations could also come up.
Well, some of the unintended consequences are also features, right? I mean, in some cases.
Yes.
Well, I think it's really some of that might be if we're looking at someone taking it and just multiplying something by 10 times, and so we could have the unintended consequence where things become more unsafe. And I think that's really where for OEMs, they're going to take a careful and cautious path through that, and I think that's wise. And really kind of thinking about what that user experience will be, thinking about what that looks like at scale, and working together with merchants and OEMs together to avoid some of those unintended consequences. I mean, that's really the key here. We want to make it convenient and safe, and make sure that it stays that way.
And you also have some people that are resistant to tech, right? You have some people that, you were mentioning that it's not going to just happen overnight, that then everybody's doing this and the robots are gassing us up and stuff like that. You do have some people some people just don't like change. Now, I know that's not anyone here at CES, right? but there are some people that they have their routine or they have their system. They kind of like what they do and they don't want to move into something like this where things are so automatic and everything like that. How do we make those people comfortable or make it accessible to the people that aren't ready for this type of tech?
Yeah, it's interesting on the comfort level. In many cases, if you notice, newer cars are starting to put cameras in the vehicles for doing things like driver monitoring and other things for detecting a drowsy driver or something else. Like I think in the Mercedes, it's in the head unit here, and in some of the Cadillacs, it's in the cluster or in the steering wheel. But we have heard a lot of complaints that people, just like our avionics team, showed off some of the new in-flight entertainment systems. Actually, I don't know if it was ours or somebody else, but they started putting them in some planes that had cameras in them, and it caused a huge kerfuffle that they had to remove all the cameras or cover them or whatever, just because people didn't want that camera staring at them. And even though it was to make sure that you get your personalized service by being there. So, you will need some tech, and what we've done is tried to find ways to make it less obtrusive. So we've done some things like in our head-up displays, you still need to know where the driver's looking to paint augmented reality across the windshield or show navigation routing information on the HUD and things like that. So you really need a fidelity to know where the eyes are looking to paint that properly. But when you put that camera, you can block it by a purse, you can block it by your steering wheel. So we actually developed some technology that we patented is using an IR camera built into the HUD that reflects off the windshield back at the driver. So you don't see a camera, but it gives you those benefits. But there are lots of things that you can do. You've got to show that you're trustable with the data you're generating and not using it, and you're providing that for the useful features of the person who owns the data, which is the individual. But you also got to find ways to make it comfortable for them to use that technology and not feel creeped out by it, right?
Right.
Yeah, there are a lot of companies that we trust. Actually, a lot. Payment companies are actually one of the bigger ones.
Yep.
They know our social security number. They can affect our credit rating. They do a lot of that. OEMs are actually companies that are pretty high in terms of a trustworthiness scale. There are other companies that are not so much. But as we start moving into this world where we're interacting with some of these other players in the world, in order for us to maintain that trust and maintain that, we're being careful and cautious, I think, is wise, as we also try to move quickly.
Is it our data? I mean, is it the driver's data? Because that data is going to be valuable, right?
Yeah, I think it depends. So one interesting thing, as vehicles decrease in the number of shipments and become more automated, those sensors that are used for autonomous start to really inflate the price tag of those vehicles. So when you first see autonomous vehicles, many times will be fleets. So in the case of fleets, they own that. It's no longer a personally owned device. So we see data being more accessible for fleet operators for the fleet they own. So if you're Uber and it's your autonomous car, you get more access to data, not necessarily everything, of course, but we see fleets using data for offsetting some of the costs. In the case of personally owned vehicles, I think most OEMs and most suppliers recognize that the individual owns that data. And if they're going to give up that ownership, it should be their choice. And it should be something in some cases that are compensated for. So there are people trying to use interesting business models that do want to know more about you in a vehicle, but they're doing it. I think OEMs have been really responsible about the way they're doing that and making sure it's completely consent-based and it's completely transparent of what is being done with the data, how they're using it, and if compensation is necessary, they do it.
Well, that makes me feel better. And also, I imagine this would help with smart cities. This is an important thing too. Again, all those data points and sensors and things like that. There's that's kind of the big push in all the different cities trying to be, as smart as they possibly can.
Yep.
Yeah. That part of the city is retail and services and things like that. So surfacing those things and making them more convenient and work together. Again, right now, the vehicle is unintegrated. That's why you have to figure out parking. You have to figure out fuel. You have to figure out insurance. You have to figure out all these financial aspects of it because none of these people talk to each other. But as a smart city is about kind of connecting all those pieces together, and as people digitize and become more, as people understand more of what an API is, they'll hopefully use them together to kind of make things that are more convenient.
Okay, I got one more question, and then I would love to open it up to questions from the audience. The idea of targeted ads while you're driving in your car, to me, this is pretty fascinating. Let's say your car knows that you need an oil change, and it's on your list of things to do, and all of a sudden you get some type of a notification that says, "Hey, you need an oil change. There's a special at this place right here. 50% off." Are we close to that? Are we? Is using the geolocation and using the artificial intelligence, everything like that. How close are we to that being integrated into our daily life?
Oh yeah, there's vehicles on the road today who are getting targeted ads.
Wow.
So there are premium vehicles. There's all kinds that are giving you information that you can use, discounts sometimes, and other things. They're trying to provide a value from it. But today you can have vehicles that have it.
But the other question is, why do I need to know about my oil change while I'm driving? There's actually all sorts of other services to employ, but maybe the vehicle is part of that. Look, as a driver, you're getting value if you want to respond to that. Do I need it while I'm driving? Yeah. That's a different thing. So,
good point.
Targeting is not necessarily a bad thing. Again, it's the question about the creepy factor, and also what is actually valuable to a driver while they're driving, and how do we actually support that? And if we can support that in a way that is safe, convenient, and kind of appropriate, then it's assistive. It's no different than someone sitting next to us. And if someone sitting next to me was like, "Hey, your oil light's on. You want me to look up how to get you an oil change right now?" No, we're probably talking about something else, and that would be really weird, right?
Yeah.
So, same with your assistant, right?
There's also ways to put those advertising, targeted or not, in ways that you may not expect, or you've seen all the time, but you don't think about, like a parking spot on either, whether it's CarPlay or Android Auto, or whether it's in your head unit where it shows the cheapest gas around you or the cheapest parking around you. You're seeing that today. That data is coming to you from somewhere, right? It's probably targeted, and it's to an extent advertising. It may not be an oil change, but there's that. I think the one big problem that I've seen is it's still in its infancy.
Yeah.
So I know one of the car companies who was putting out that targeted advertisement, more of almost like a replacement for the album art on your music.
Yeah.
The aggregator that was bringing the ads were not reflective of the brand that the advertisement was going into in terms of the vehicle brand. So there was a lot of comments about, I'm getting this thing that does not match the expectation of the premium vehicle I'm in. And there's still a lot of that we're still in. We're in our infancy in that area.
I remember 15 years ago, OnStar, one of the features that it had was that it would tell you the gas, where it was cheapest, like that. Yeah. And that was mind blowing, 15 years ago. It knew what the price of gas was, and it could help you do that and, save you a couple bucks. Okay. Well, I'd love to open it up. Do you guys have any questions? Yeah, go ahead. I think we've got a mic right there. If you want to, if you just want to hop up there real quick so everybody can hear you. Love to get a couple questions.
Yeah, hello. My name's Nick Gibbs from Automotive News Europe. I had a question about revenue generation for the OEMs. We talked a little bit about that, I think you did, Andrew. But I'm interested to hear your opinion on what happens when we're further into autonomy and people can just migrate to their phone and they don't need to involve the car at all. Are OEMs then going to get cut out of that revenue, which perhaps they were building up via the dash screen? Or what do you think is going to replace that? Thank you.
Sure. I think part of that was for me, at least. So it's interesting that one of the things we thought originally was that as vehicles became more autonomous or assisted driving, we'd see a decrease in the number of head-up displays that we were winning projects for. And we've seen actually the opposite, because for a period of time, you're seeing they want to use more of the real estate, even when you're in an autonomous, to really make the experience better. So augmented reality, all kinds of things you can do in the vehicle. Also, even in the head-up displays, we start dealing with what I call comfort ADAS. So just because your car can drive itself doesn't mean you want to let go of the wheel because you're scared it doesn't see that dog or that bike or that something. So a lot of these autonomous applications, they're still painting on the windshield that it sees that disabled vehicle or it sees that dog or bike. So some of it's changing. The other thing that's changing pretty dramatically is we're seeing a resurgence of rear seat entertainment, where it was kind of a dying market. It's coming back. Big displays, 11 displays per vehicle. They're premium audio. We announced our Klipsch partnership for a reason, and that's because they're going back to that, wow, I'm going to have an hour in my car I'm not going to be driving. I can watch a movie. I can listen to music. I can have a great experience with that music. So we're actually seeing kind of the what you're doing in the infotainment changes. It becomes more of a living room experience rather than a driving experience. But we're definitely not seeing the amount of electronics decrease. The same with, by the way, in the plane space, again, you've seen a lot of planes go to bring your own device. The amount of technology you need to manage concurrently 300 or 500 devices streaming movies from a server in a plane did not reduce the amount of electronics. So it actually increased a lot of the things we're providing to airlines, and we see the same thing happening in the car. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and also, services and services take a lot of work, and you have to really be in it to generate any revenue at all. I think a lot of people kind of throw stones at the rideshare companies, but they know services really well. I mean, it's amazing that we all, probably more than half the people here have taken a Lyft or a Uber here. And that's a tough thing to do. So if you're planning to try to generate revenue from services, you have to be committed to services, and that means committed to understanding what your customers are going to want, how to provide those services, how to partner, and how to create the advantages and accept the advantages and disadvantages of doing that at the same time. So,
Okay. Next question.
Hi, I'm Bill Christopher with Uline Research. So I'm a creature of habit. So here's a typical Wednesday for me. I get off of work and I go to the car wash. I have to get out my credit card. Mm-hmm. I go to Costco. I have to get out my credit card. I drive home on the tollway. All right, I have an RF device. I go and pick up my cleaning. I have to get out my credit card through a drive-up. I go to Panera Bread. I have to do a credit card. They have a drive-up. Why can't we solve this insanity? Because we can solve it on a tollway. Why can't we solve it in a car?
Yep.
Well, I will just say, I appreciate that question. I will just say, I think that part of why we're here is because we think there is at least a bit of a use case for solving that insanity. Yep. Certainly the drive-through use case seems to be the biggest problem. I do wonder if you have a problem with Costco, just as a product manager, I put my product manager hat on and think there's something called click and collect in logistics where you can order ahead. Target has it now. I think Amazon did it for a while. I don't know if they're still doing it. Where you pre-order, you roll up, and then they open your back and they shove all your stuff in the back and you just roll away. All of those use cases could be good examples of why we would want to have our car be the wallet. Again, my question would be, why wouldn't your phone be the wallet for that as well? All of these things can be interchangeable with your devices. And maybe that's what we should think about, is that these devices might have very specific use cases, but you might mix and match and decide that you want to use your phone in that scenario. Or you might mix and match and say, I'm going to buy my Costco from my car, and I'm going to roll up and they're going to shove my stuff in my back and I'm going to go away. Like, all of those things I think are acceptable future scenarios. But we're working on it.
Well, I think a lot of some of what you've talked about has been consolidated somewhat on the phone. So, some of those things are apps on those particular, with those particular companies that you can consolidate all the payment onto kind of one instrument. In some cases, you can use that same phone to pay. So I think it's, you named a lot of different merchants, and so there's the logistics of all those individual merchants as well. So, but the more that we kind of, again, digitally transform, I mean, actually, for example, most of the major fuel companies have now the ability to pay with a mobile application. That's for that industry is amazing. But they have digitally transformed, and you can activate a pump and pay for fuel from a mobile application. So a lot of these things are happening. It makes it possible if they've actually stood up the APIs to do that.
And I think going back to my comment from earlier, it will be a mixed world, and you might choose to use your credit card for some things, you might choose to use your phone for other things, and you might choose to use your car for other types of scenarios.
Hey, we still have vinyl, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Sure, come on up. By the way, can we get a quick round of applause for this panel?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. That's been a really interesting discussion. I'm Andy Turton from Engine Group. It's a consumer insights group. So I wanted to share some perspectives with you and get your take on a question that comes from it. So OEMs have tried with the connected car to monetize, and they failed. They've really struggled. Consumers love it. They want to pay for it. They expect it. Why weren't all of the things we're talking about be exactly the same? Why weren't they just expected to be part of the deal? In other words, why will OEMs eventually take it? Because if they can't make money from it, why would they? And the related point, and it goes to something you said, John, which is that the OEMs are actually trusted. The data I have says that they're not. They're trusted for lots of things, particularly great engineering, reliable cars, and so on. They're not trusted to handle all the data that's generated in connected cars and connected services. Not at all trusted. In fact, no one is. So there's some big issues here, which I think that there are solutions to, but I'm curious about what you think the solutions will be so that the monetization of all these fantastic opportunities actually happens. Thank you.
Sure. I'll address the first one, at least on the
Time to think.
yeah, the connected car and trying to monetize that a little bit. A lot of it is figuring out the right value to both the consumer and to the OEM. And I think in the past, a lot of proprietary platforms, especially in the in-vehicle infotainment space, meant you were paying Spotify to do a custom app that they didn't want to maintain for the 100,000 vehicles that were out there, and you're paying for every last little bit. The more that we're ruggedizing effectively a smartphone to last in an automotive environment, the more it's easier for car companies to quickly iterate and add content and applications and services and purchase options that are more like you have in your consumer device, and you can leverage the millions or hundreds of millions of Android deployments in an automotive application that you can then not have to pay for every customized variant. So it's really reducing cost to where an OEM doesn't have to really pay a lot of money to enable a service that could be valuable for the customer, and they can monetize easier because they don't have such an upfront investment. I think in the telematics version, in the connected car flavor, you have to drive some value back out of that connectivity that makes it worth just putting it in automatically, whether the consumer wants to pay an added fee or not. So there's some OEMs that are going to be launching some telematics services that will be $5 more onto your bill, and you get unlimited connectivity in some cases that will stretch across lots of different carriers that will open up those connected cars to do more, and they'll structure those kind of deals that will make it better. So you'll see connectivity, also their value back for fixing cars or analyzing it or sending software updates, keeping the car current, keeping the security current. For purchasing means you're going to have a connection for that OEM regardless. It's just whether they offer more connectivity for the consumer that they value or not will be the next phase.
Yeah, I can't address the specific kind of point or study about trustworthiness in connected cars. I guess more to the point I was making earlier about the trustworthiness of OEMs is related to the vehicle itself, and also when it comes to financial information. Most of the OEMs actually have financial divisions. They do a lot of leasing and financial services, and people trust those financial services they do with as similar to banks and insurance companies and other things. So it's really it's really about how to kind of extend that into the type of service that they want to create. I do feel like the services that have existed in the past and exist up to this point have not delivered on consumer expectation, and that might be some of the, whether it's distrust or lack of interest is kind of hard to say. And I think some of that is related to where they might have been with some of the technology and the expectation difference between what they get in the car and what they get in their pocket day in and day out. So can we actually improve the services and improve those applications to a point where they deliver to a consumer the way that they expect? I mean, it's hard to, I see my own disappointment when I look at some of these infotainment systems that are not Panasonic that just are far too confusing, and I think what we want to see is be able to meet our consumers' expectation when it comes to infotainment and services. That's just baseline, and then from there, if we can actually get to the next level of delighting consumers and delighting them, we will have repeat customers and more loyal customers to the industry.
All right. They are giving me the hook sign back there. So I would like to thank all of you very much. You were an amazing audience. One last time, could we give a round of applause to the panel? And feel free to connect with them afterwards, and make sure you check out Innovation and Tech Today online and through social media, because we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. Thanks, everybody.